Imagine waking up on your 40th birthday and checking your investment account, and there it is, £1 million. It sounds impossible, right? But with a simple, consistent investing strategy, this is something anyone can achieve. No lottery wins, no get-rich-quick schemes, just the power of compounding working in your favor. In this video, I'll show you exactly how you can follow this path step by step. Let's break it down. Did you know one of the world's best investors, Warren Buffett, started investing at the age of 11, and by the time he was age 14, he had $5,000 to his name and he made his first $1 million by the age of 30. But the most amazing part is not that. The most amazing part is most of his wealth was created later on in his life and things just went exponentially up. When he was asked about his wealth, he said, "My wealth has come from a combination of living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest." And in this video, we're going to be talking more about compound interest and how you can use this to your advantage. The average stock market return is about 9% a year. If we look at the S&P 500, since 2001, so over 23 years ago, it's gone up 687%. And if we were to annualize that return, we're talking about a 9.1% return every single year. And this is important to note because we're going to be using this number later on. Here in the UK, we have something called a stocks and shares ISA, and in other countries, they'll have something similar, just called different things. With a stocks and shares ISA, you can invest every year tax-free, so you get an allowance of £20,000 a year. Whatever you make on that is you don't pay a penny in tax. And in the UK, this is one of the only investments where it is actually tax-free, whereas almost everything else in the UK, you will be taxed right till the end. There are many different ISA providers in the UK, and the most popular ones are over here. So you got Trading 212, Free Trade, Hargreaves Lansdown, and Interactive Investor. And this table just summarizes most of them. Everyone uses different ones, but the one I'm personally using is Trading 212, and I strongly recommend it because there's no standing charges, there's no monthly charges. The main fees that they have is this foreign exchange fee over here, but pretty much everything else, there's no fee to it. So I strongly recommend Trading 212 if you do want to get started. So anyway, let's break this down. £20,000 a year is the same as £1,667 a month or £385 a week. For some people, this might be achievable to invest every single year. However, for others, it might be a bit too much for them. But my recommendation is to get started the earlier you can and with whatever you've got. You don't have to invest the full £20,000 every single year. You can always work your way up and increase the amounts you deposit later on once you are gone further into your careers, etc. So the power of compounding. Why did I mention 19 years of all numbers? What's the reason behind it? If we were to deposit the full £20,000 a year, that's the same as investing £1,667 a month. So let's just say we start with this amount, and let's just say we can grow it 10% every single year, and it compounds every single year. Every month you continue adding £1,667 so that you total your £20,000 allowance, and that's right till the end. Now if we calculate after 5 years how much you'll have, you could see you've deposited a total of just over £100,000, and from that you've made a profit of £28,000. Your total investment value is about this much. And if I showed this as a chart, you could see the blue is what you've actually deposited in total, and in orange is the actual profit you've made. After every single year, the amount that you're making is increasing. But now the interesting thing is, if I change this to 19 years, you've made £1 million and you've only invested £380,000, and you've made a profit of almost 2 times what you've deposited. And how does this work? This is compound interest. If I go back to Warren Buffett's net worth, you could see something similar has happened over here. So you start off small, but slowly it starts increasing every single year, and later in life he's one of the richest people in the world. Warren Buffett didn't become rich because he invested a lot of money or anything like that. He became rich because he started early and he kept going. He just kept going. Whether the markets are down, he'll continue investing. Whether the markets are high, he continued investing. And that's what made him one of the richest people in the world at the moment. This is something called the snowball effect Warren Buffett has done. So essentially you start off small, you start off with whatever you can. So £20,000 10 years down the line might not be anything. However, if you continue adding to it, that £20,000 that you've invested, it starts rolling and it starts getting traction. It gets bigger and bigger, and eventually your portfolio size will become very big before you know it. No one starts with a portfolio size of 1 million. It becomes 1 million eventually. And the key is to be disciplined, to continue investing, and to make it work essentially. And if we look at this chart, the amount that you're getting is more than what you've actually deposited in total, and that's what we should be aiming for. Now, how can we make this work for you? Most people, they finish uni at the age of 21, or they start working at the age of 21 and they start earning. And I appreciate that at first it's very difficult to save money because there's a lot of expenses, there's rent, and there's a lot going on. But if you start with what you can and then increase the amount that you're depositing, then eventually you will end up with something like this. It might take a bit longer than 19 years, but the reason I put 19 years is because that's the ISA allowance. So that's just assuming that you're investing the ISA allowance. The biggest barrier that most people have is just getting started. Once you get started, once you know what you're doing, then it's very easy. But a lot of people, they say, oh, I don't know how to get started. Oh, I've heard about this investing thing, but I just don't know what I'm doing. I find it really upsetting because working as a doctor here in the UK, I speak to some of the other doctors and no one really knows about investing. They're not really into it. They think that they need to sit down, they need to do a lot of research and everything, but that's not the case at all. And there's two methods that you can go around doing it. The first method is the passive approach and the second method is the active approach. And for those that don't know what they're doing and for those that just don't know how to get started, I strongly recommend the passive approach. And let's talk about the passive approach. I showed you this chart earlier where you've got the chart of the S&P 500, one of the pretty much tracks the US market. It's got a lot of stocks. I'm not saying to invest in the S&P 500 specifically, I'm just using this as an example. There's plenty of ETFs out there, but the S&P 500, it has 500 companies in it, and the top holdings are these companies over here. So you got things like Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, and from the start, so since 2001, it's gone up 687%, making 9.1% every single year. With this, you don't need to sit down and research. Another example I'm going to give is the SMH, so the semiconductor ETF. This one focuses more on companies with semiconductors, so you got things like Nvidia, Taiwan Semiconductor, Broadcom, ASML, etc. From the start, this has gone up over 1000%, and every year it's annualized at 22% return. So something like this is really good to invest in. The main thing is, with something like this, you don't need to do research. You don't need to sit down and do endless hours of, how to analyze Nvidia stock, how to analyze this stock. You just choose an ETF and then you invest in it. And if you want, you can also automate and select multiple ETFs and invest in all of them all together. And this is really passive for that reason. The other approach is to do an active approach. I only do the active approach because I'm interested in these things. I really enjoy researching companies and I really enjoy trying to find some gems. An example being, if I just click on Nvidia over here, I like going through and seeing how much free cash flow they have and checking out their valuations, etc. I enjoy doing these things, and something like this is really heavily rewarded as well, because if I invested in Nvidia in 2022, it had a stock price of just $14, and today we're talking a stock price of $108. So the money that can be made from being able to do active research like this is much more compared to passive. But with that comes a very big risk as well, because not all companies perform the same. If I use an example of AMD as an example, if I invested in 2022, it's gone from about $60 to about $102, which is really good. It's almost doubled in price. However, if I compared that to Nvidia went from about $14 to $110. So the difference there is very big. So it's very dependent on the type of company that you're choosing, etc. And sometimes some companies even go down. So if I now look at the company called NIO, which is an electric car company in China, you could see in 2022 the stock price was about $30. Whereas today we're talking $3. Whilst it's heavily rewarding if you pick the right stocks, if you do pick the wrong stocks, then there's the potential to lose a lot of money as well. The point I'm trying to make here is, if you don't know anything about stocks, the main thing is, number one, to get started, and you can get started passively. You don't need to do the research. You can invest in ETFs and let them manage it. But if you want the potential to make more money quicker, then you're looking more of an active approach. However, it does involve you having to learn more skills and being able to decide what to invest in and what not to invest in. So there are advantages and disadvantages to each. It's something that you just need to weigh up and decide which type of person you are. Let's talk about some of the mistakes some people make. This is the chart of the SMH, which I showed you earlier. Some of the mistakes some people make is panic selling. And what I mean by this is they'll buy, for example, when the stock price is about $49, but then they'll see their investment go down almost 50%, down to $33, and then they'll get scared that it's going to zero, and then they'll sell their full position. But then if they, rather than selling there, if they just continued buying and they just stuck to a strategy, then the markets did recover and it continued going up. And again, over here in 2021, we're talking it from $100 down to about $58. So again, nearly another 50% correction. And what happens is some people, they see this decline in their portfolio and then they panic and they sell. Again, if they just stuck to their strategy, carry on buying weekly, monthly, or whatever they're doing, and they just held, then the market recovered. And at the moment, the market's in a downtrend as well, and there will be people that do panic sell. Times like this is really important to stick to a strategy, and for some people, that strategy might be something called DCA, where they dollar cost average, they invest a certain amount every single week for as long as they can. And that's one of the best proven methods where people have actually made money, and that's something similar to what Warren Buffett has done himself. The other mistake that some people make, they'll buy a stock when it's low, and then they'll see their money go up, and they'll think, oh, I'm a genius, I bought a stock really cheap and it's going up and up. I'm going to buy more and I'm going to buy a larger amount. So as the price keeps going up, then they'll invest more and more amounts into the stock. So for example, they'll be DCAing about £50 a week, for example, over here when the market's low. But as it's starting to go up, they'll increase that. Okay, now I'm going to put in £100 a week. Now I'm going to put £500 a week. And then they'll go a bit crazy like that. And then they'll see everything decline again. And then they'll panic and then they'll sell. Even here, they might think they're a genius buying it at the lows over here. And then, continue buying it up. And the price it starts going up and they're thinking that this is amazing. I'm making so much money. Let me put in more money. Let me triple the amount I'm putting in. Let me put 4 times the amount I'm putting in. They'll continue doing that until this happens again. And that really reminds me of this picture over here. This is something called the Wall Street cheat sheet. And essentially what happens is you've got disbelief right at the bottom of the markets. Then as it starts going up, you got hope, then you got optimism, and you got thrill, and you can see how the emotions change as things go up. But then as things start going down, then you could see how different the emotions are, and essentially they just panic sell when it's right at the bottom, when really that should have been the price where people should have been buying. And that's usually where the big boys, such as the institutions, that's where they buy. Anyway, back to this over here, hitting £1 million in 19 years. Why is this a big deal? Why is this so special? It doesn't have to be £1 million. It could be anything. It could be whatever works for you. The reason it's a big deal is because it gives you the power of financial freedom. It reduces the pressure on you as a person. It reduces the pressure on you to work long hours. It reduces the pressure on your own finances. And if you want, you can always switch your job to part-time if needed, if finances aren't a problem. One of the things being a doctor is when I speak to other doctors and I ask them, do you enjoy being a doctor? Do you regret being a doctor? If there's one thing that you want to change, what is it that you would want to change? One of the main things other doctors say is, I enjoy my job as a doctor, but if there's one thing that I could do is I would go part-time, because the hours that I'm working is too much. The night shifts, the on-calls, the long weeks is just too much. And something like this from a young age, I've got it stuck in my head that, I enjoy my job as a doctor, but I don't want to work the long hours that these people are working. It's too much. It affects your life. It affects your family. And that's the reason why I'm trying to work towards financial freedom. And ultimately, you get more independence in your own life. And that's why this is a big deal. So in conclusion, the best time to start was yesterday, and the next best time to start is now. So if you haven't started investing, I strongly recommend invest whatever you can. Start with what you have. You don't have to invest £20,000 a year, but make a start, because a lot of people, they don't make a start, and that's why they get left behind. The next thing is make sure you stay disciplined. It's really important to stay disciplined. Forget your emotions. The stocks that you invest in, the ETFs that you invest in, the markets, Wall Street, they don't care about your emotion. They don't care about what your stock is doing. They don't care about what the market is doing. They will do whatever they can to make money for themselves, but you need to have discipline and you need to have a strategy for yourself. Don't trade out of emotion. Don't try and invest out of emotion. Have a goal, have a strategy, and stick to it no matter what. And for those of you that are in the UK, the deadline for maxing out the stocks ISA is 5th April, which is tomorrow. And it's like that every single year. So if you haven't invested up to £20,000, invest whatever you can, because if you don't use this allowance, then it will reset tomorrow and your 2024 to 2025 allowance is gone after that. So I strongly recommend to max your ISA if you haven't already. If you liked this video, you really like my video on the 6 things I wish I knew if I started investing before. Thank you for watching.